Okay, so I'm going to introduce Matt and then he can take it away. Matt Horsnell is a father of three, an amateur strength athlete, and science nerd who incorporates invertebrate fossils into rock sculptures. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee. He was diagnosed with narcolepsy with cataplexy in 2007, and now, as a trained speaker with Project Sleep's Rising Voices of Narcolepsy program, aims to raise awareness about narcolepsy and sleep. So please take it away, Matt.
Thank you so much, Julie. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm just really excited to be sharing my presentation with everyone here on Facebook Live. And it definitely a little bit sad that we'll have to postpone our April meeting, but this is second best for sure. And just again, I'm really tickled. Like Julie said, my name's Matt Horsnell, and I'm the world's strongest person having narcolepsy with cataplexy. At least that's what I tell myself every morning when I wake up. So, and more on that kind of as we get through my story. So, Julie, if you want to swipe slides there. I've always had this fascination with science, art, and strength growing up as a kid, and as you can see, I had just really a great childhood. The picture down there is me with my mom and dad, and that's the day that they brought my brother home. That's probably the last time for at least 20 years that my brother and I actually got along. You can see the excitement in my face. In all seriousness, though, my mom, dad, and brother, along with my aunt, which is in the picture right next to her, those folks make up the core of my support team that I have here in with my family. They're just awesome. I've also enjoyed art. You can see there's a little picture that I created that hangs proudly in my mom's house down in Florida now. And the other picture there is of Bill Kazmaier, one of the world's strongest men, who had an influence on my life. Just we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this also, you see there's a quote there, and this is from my preschool yearbook. So right before I was about to go to kindergarten, when I was graduating from preschool, they asked me what will happen when I go to kindergarten, and my answer was, I don't know, take a nap and play. And as you'll see down the road, that certainly has had a profound application. We call that foreshadowing in literary terms. And what are you going to be when you grow up? And I said a spaceman. Pretty sure I meant astronaut, but I've been accused of being in space quite a bit, little space cadet. So going to the next slide. So I guess the time when I started to notice that I was a little bit different than other folks was when I started to spend a lot of time with my peers, and that was in Boy Scouts. And I can remember it was when I was about 14, so maybe a couple years into me experiencing some differences. I was at Boy Scout camp, and we had just won what was called the Baden-Powell Award. So it was for being the best patrol at our summer outpost camp. And it was the night after Vespers, and we had just won the award, and all my friends were going to go out. And you would think that a 14-year-old boy would be full of energy and excitement after being the patrol leader of the best patrol at camp. So all my friends decided to go out and swim to Rock Island, whereas I decided to stay in my tent and sleep because I was exhausted from the day's activities. And to be that tired, when all your friends are going out and partying, that was kind of one of those stop and think moments that, looking back, I can definitely say, yeah, I was a little bit different. My sleep needs were definitely a little more intense than most people. A couple years later, it was about 14 or 15. It was a little bit after my parents had gotten a divorce. I was staying at my dad's house, and it was really late. I was really tired, and I was walking through his apartment, and as I was getting into bed, um, I had this dead woman uh, fall out of the closet, and she landed on top of me, and it was terrifying. I couldn't breathe. I remember, um, you know, just screaming out, "Ah!" and waking up my little brother who was next to me, and he's shaking me, Matt, wake up, and um, I could hear him, but I couldn't actually move, and it just felt like there was this woman on top of me, and it was just an absolute terrifying experience. And um, my brother would, he always accused me of making these smacky noises with my mouth, and just really getting on his nerves as I was about to go to sleep. But this experience just sat with me, and it was a recurring, um, what ended up being a dream that I was having. That this woman would uh, just sneak up and just scare the living sin out of me, and that's kind of it's not something as a teenage boy that you're really comfortable talking about. You don't go to your dad or your mom and go, hey, I had this really terrifying experience where a dead woman fell on top of me. That's not something that just comes naturally. And you know, it definitely kind of shaped, um, my fear of going to sleep, and uh, so, and moving on, that was something that I always kind of worried about right before I would go to sleep. Would this woman come back and visit me? Fortunately, she hadn't come back too much later on in life, but those memories will always kind of haunt me. Um, Also, I the first time that I experienced this strange muscle weakness was when I was doing the squat routine. Now, exercise has always been something that's been very important in my life. About the same time that I actually started experiencing some sleepiness, I started to pick up weight training at home, lifting weights, and so when I was about 18, maybe 19, I was working out at a local gym, and I was doing this really cool squat routine. It was called super squats. They also go by the name of breathing squats, and it was really, really uh, brutal. You also call them breathing squats. You would pick a number that you were comfortable doing, about 10 reps, and then you would continue to do one rep after another, breathing deeply in between each rep. And about rep number 13, as I was progressing through this routine, it's 225, 235 pounds. I had the bar on my back, and I squatted down into the hole, as they called it, and my knees kind of wobbled. Well, I was able to kind of recover from that and stand back up again. Then I took a couple of deep breaths, and I just was like, I got to get through this. This is just something. Let's go. And so I went back down again for that 14th um, rep, and my knees buckled. And then as I was trying to come back up, I just had this overwhelming sensation of fear that, oh crap, this isn't going to come back up. And as soon as that fear hit, I just hit the ground like just a ton of bricks. And fortunately for me at the time, I had a spotter, but I was also in a squat rack. The weight came crashing down. Everybody stopped. They look. I'm in this puddle of sweat, um, bruised ego, and just confusion. And I just can't really move. I can kind of see and know what's going on around me. I hear my workout partner, saying, Matt, are you okay? Are you okay? And it felt like, God, minutes, 5 minutes, but really it was probably closer to 30 seconds. But I kind of came around. I was like, yeah. No, I just need a second. And so I kind of sat there, just still kind of trying to wrap my mind around what had happened. And at the time, I really didn't have a way to articulate, truly what had happened. I dismissed it as, a blood sugar incident, of just having the most righteous squat set of all time. And I remember my workout partner, his name was Matt. looking at me and going, I think we're probably done for the day. And all I could say was, yeah, no, let's just go. And so I went ahead and took the walk of shame out of the gym and just packed it up for another day. That's the important thing about making sure that when you're lifting, you always have a good spotter, but you also lift safely. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. I knew that I was different, and about at the age of 17 is when the first time that I got a diagnosis. I remember going to my pediatrician, explaining to him a lot of the symptoms. I was sleeping a lot during class at school, sleeping before class, before we even got to school, taking naps after school, and the doctor was pretty convinced that I was dealing with depression. And I remember his recommendation was for me to take an antidepressant, but also to take some walks and get some exercise. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I am getting exercise. I'm probably getting more than most of my peers. But at the same time, I didn't have the understanding, vocabulary, or the confidence to really say any different. So I went along with following doctor's orders. And about age 20, this is when I would have been in college. I was officially diagnosed with attention deficit disorder after going through some psychological testing. And again, it was my complaint to the psychiatrist at the time was I'm sleepy, I'm having trouble concentrating. So the ADD was a diagnosis. Here's some stimulant. Here's an antidepressant. You probably also are a little bit tired. So I had gone on to see it was 4 different psychiatrists and a pediatrician. I kept getting prescribed all these different antidepressants. Nothing was really working for me. And I was really having a tough time articulating, that I wasn't sleepy because I was depressed. I was depressed because I was sleepy. And which came first? Both of them kind of were going hand in hand, but that sleepiness was the profound impact on my life that was affecting everything else. And a couple years later, I was talking with my mom, and she mentioned, I knew she had sleep apnea, and she recommended, well, hey, Matt, maybe we should go ahead and schedule an appointment for you to see a sleep specialist. And so I went ahead and made that appointment, thinking full well that, okay, I probably got sleep apnea. So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. What I found out during that appointment was that this was the initial consult. I remember filling out all the paperwork, and, the doctor came in and he looked over everything, looked over my sleepiness scale that we all take as people with narcolepsy before we go. And I remember him saying, Matt, I think I know what you have. He called in his resident at the time, and he was like, I think you may have a sleep disorder called narcolepsy. We need to run some extra tests to figure this out. And I can remember my doctor saying those words, and it just not really. I mean, I heard him say it, but I was like, what does he know? This isn't what I've seen before. I'd studied, sleep disorders and narcolepsy in high school and my psychology class, and even in my abnormal psychology class in college. And this just it didn't jive with what I knew, and it also didn't, jive with what I, knew from Hollywood and from, the mainstream television and movies. I wasn't just falling asleep left and right. Well, certainly I was taking a lot of naps. So I went and started to do some research, and after that, and before my sleep study, and I realized, well, actually, there may be some truth to what he was saying. So it turns out that narcolepsy affects about 1 in 2,000 people. That's about how many people have the condition. That's not how many people have been diagnosed, and more on that later. So in order to get a proper diagnosis with narcolepsy, there's a test, but the main symptoms that you experience with narcolepsy are excessive daytime sleepiness, which, I had. That was what I was describing, with Boy Scouts, was that profound daytime sleepiness is what interfered with me during my schoolwork. It's this feeling as if you haven't slept for like 48 to 72 hours. So it's not just your normal, hey, I'm tired because I haven't slept well. This is a very sometimes debilitating, overwhelming feeling that you struggle with, that can really affect your quality of life in so many ways. That's one symptom that everybody with narcolepsy experiences. A symptom that only a portion of people with narcolepsy experience, that's cataplexy. And that is an involuntary loss of muscle tone that comes on quite suddenly. Don't really know that it's about to happen. For me, that first time I experienced a full body cataplexy episode was when I was in the gym. And that was what had happened when I was squatting. The fear caught up with me. And before I knew it, I was just on the ground. I was still conscious, I was still aware, but I couldn't move. And it can be a very, very, very frightening experience when it happens. It can also happen in partial ways. And so that's where you have a case of slack jaw, maybe some slurred speech, some dropsies with the hand. Those are all some knee buckling that happens quite a bit. So it can happen in partial ways in addition to full body episodes. The hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations, those are visual, auditory, and tactile disturbances that happen before sleep. That's the hypnagogic, and then the hypnopompic are as you're getting out of sleep. So it's a kind of a blurring of the transition between being awake and dreaming, and vice versa. And it feels like you are actually experiencing what was taking place. And the first time it happens, it can be very, very overwhelming. A lot of times people have intruder issues. They think there's an intruder in their house. Some people have it can be as minor as just seeing, I sometimes will see a rabbit. I know there's not really a rabbit there. I'll also hear noises. I think I hear people talking in another room. So those are all examples of hallucinations that you can feel. The sleep paralysis is what will sometimes occur after, in conjunction with the hallucination. For me, it many times it does, but it's where you basically are awake, but your body can't move. And so that's during that transition out of the sleep state, your mind turns on and your body doesn't. So, for me, I can hear the alarm going off. I want to move, I want to get up, but there's just no movement. And usually it's a little bit less time than it actually feels. But it, when you're stuck in that moment, time does kind of stand still. And that the final symptom is the disrupted nighttime sleep. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand about narcolepsy is that we can't just sleep whenever we want to. We're not I guess automatons that just fall over and go to sleep. We experience temporary bouts of insomnia. Like the rest of the population, we struggle at night. That disrupted nighttime sleep ends up feeding that excessive daytime sleepiness. And that's one thing that they study when they're looking at that sleep test. There's two primary types of narcolepsy, I guess only types of narcolepsy: narcolepsy with cataplexy and narcolepsy without cataplexy. Now, narcolepsy with cataplexy is associated with a loss of hypocretin cells in your brain, and narcolepsy without cataplexy, research hasn't really shown. There's not as much understanding about it, but either way, they're both struggles that people deal with and can have a profound impact on your life. Next slide, please. And I've kind of alluded to this a little bit. There's a sleep test involved for diagnosis. There's two tests that we work with here in the United States. There's a polysomnography, which is an overnight sleep test. They're looking at a whole lot of different factors. This is a test that's used to identify sleep apnea as well. And if you show up with, you know, either mild, clinically insignificant sleep apnea or no sleep apnea, but you still show some sleep issues, they'll ask you to come back for a multi-sleep latency test the next day, and that's a series of 5 naps that takes place over the course of the day. They're testing for a couple different things. They want to see if you go to sleep during these 20-minute naps, and also how quickly you are going into dream sleep. In my test, I went to sleep in all 5 naps, and I went into REM sleep into 3 of those naps. Once within, it was under a minute. I'm not quite sure the exact time, but when the doctor told me I had to take a sleep test, my first thought was, oh, I'm ready for this. This is something I've been studying for my whole life. So I guess you could say I aced it. But at the same time, I can still remember, I went, got all these tests. The doctor sat down, he showed me some of the results, and he said he was going to look through that sleep latency test and give me a call just to confirm everything. And I can remember receiving that call. I was actually at the same gym where my cataplexy episode had taken place, and I was standing there, and I just remember time just stopping, standing still, and hearing the words, Matt, you definitely have narcolepsy with cataplexy. I remember he went on to say a whole bunch of other things, but I just stopped and just, it took me a minute to soak in, what that meant, for me as a person. It's something that I've still kind of struggled to wrap my mind around. So go ahead, next slide. As far as treatment goes for people with narcolepsy, there is no cure. That's something that we all hope for one day down the road. But for right now, we treat the symptoms, and there's a couple different ways to do that. Wake promoters or stimulants for daytime sleepiness. Those help address, that sense of tired and sense of fatigue. Again, you're taking the medication, but that's not necessarily going to keep you awake. There are some nighttime medications for that helps with the daytime sleepiness and the cataplexy in particular. Those put you into a very deep sleep that allows your body to go into the stage 4 and stage 5 sleep that we are so desperately craving throughout the day, and that alleviates the daytime sleepiness and cataplexy symptoms throughout the day. There's also some antidepressants for cataplexy. Now, when I was going through my journey to diagnosis, I was prescribed a number of different antidepressants, and those masked some of the cataplexy symptoms that I was experiencing. And so I didn't have a true appreciation until I was actually taken off of some of those of what cataplexy can feel like throughout the day. So that just is another reason why awareness is really, really key. Scheduled daytime naps is, something that for me is just critical for me to function. And, I posted back up that quote from me in preschool, and just how profound it was. I've adopted pretty much my life philosophy is take a nap and play. I love to work out, and I love to take those naps, and it's just part of who I am. And the other critical thing for me is my support network. My online support network, my counseling, my family, my friends. Those are a big part of my treatment as well, and I can't do without any of these components. It all helps to shape and mold, my quality of life. So if you want to go to the next slide. So life with narcolepsy, for me, the biggest challenge, but source of greatest joy in my life is parenting with narcolepsy. And I'm blessed to have 3 wonderful kids, 2 daughters, Michaela and Rachel. Michaela's 15, Rachel's 13, and then my son Caden, who's 7. They really just helped me and have helped me get through so much. You know, sometimes I struggle with a reason to want to get out of bed, and so to have to be the primary care parent for my 3 rascals, is just critical for a motivator for me to get going every day. And I know that one day they're going to be watching this. And I just want them to know how important they are in my life, because without them, I wouldn't be here. So they're just they are that special to me. My mental health is plays a big factor. The depression, it feeds into everything, and so making sure that I'm not alone in this is key. And part of that for me is my online support groups that I do with Wake Up Narcolepsy. I participate in those on a weekly basis. They form a huge foundation for support for me. I get to see friends and people who fill me up. They're positive people in my life. I've had some really, really challenging experiences, but those friends that I've developed in those support groups, they have really helped shape my mental health. My sleep health is another thing that's really been important for me. And that sleep health is, I had to go back and get another sleep study done, and this is something that not everybody has to do, but my medication wasn't really that effective. I was having a whole lot of trouble in my personal life. I was really kind of down and depressed, and what we found was that the clinically insignificant sleep apnea that was discovered in my 2007 sleep study when I was 25 had developed into very significant obstructive sleep apnea by the time I was this was 7 years later, so I was in my early 30s, and that sleep apnea had contributed to some weight gain, and I wasn't really at my healthiest. I was still kind of working out at that time, and so it's really, really important. One thing that's been particularly helpful for me in my physical health has been in my mental health has been my exercise, but also my creative outlet. And that for me is you can see there, that's one of my sculptures that I've created. I create these anthropomorphic creations, so creations that imitate life, and I do that out of there. I've got a couple little examples. These are crinoids, which are just small invertebrates. I collect those with my son Caden, and I kind of breathe life into things that have been not alive for up to 400 million years. So it's kind of a cool little thing that I do. I also am a big advocate. I work with Project Sleep. I've gone to Washington, and I continue to advocate for advances in sleep research and sleep disorder research. And I've also done a little bit of speaking out with No Narcolepsy. I don't know if that's a picture you may have seen me during my that's my pamphlet. I've also had a large picture of my head on a poster that I've got to stand next to, which was one of the highlights of my experience living with narcolepsy. And Julie also has a signed brochure. She blessed me with a signed copy of her audiobook. I can explain that to you later at the end, but that was it's one of my prized possessions. And so when she asked me for my autograph, that was a no-brainer. Part of my life has been, like I said, I'm the world's strongest person having narcolepsy with cataplexy. And in 2008, so this was about a year after I'd been diagnosed, I had the pleasure of meeting, that's Bill Kazmaier, the man from the original slide there. He's world's strongest man. in, I think it's 81, 83, and 84. And he was speaking at a local YMCA. I got to work out as he was showing us some of his the equipment that he was promoting. I got to work out alongside him, just listen to him. He pulled a bus in front of the building that we were staying at, and at that point, I decided that I may have this condition that makes me weak, but that doesn't mean that I can't be strong. And so that's when this whole concept of being the world's strongest person, having narcolepsy or cataplexy, was really that's the origin of that story. It's not about literally being the world's strongest person, although sometimes I do think that I am, but it's about the strength that it takes to get out of bed every day, so that I can spend time being a dad with my kids. I've been through quite a bit in life, stuff that would take way too long for any sort of presentation. I've survived a flood in 2010. I've gone through a separation and a divorce, and I've had to kind of reinvent myself. I wasn't always an outspoken advocate for living with narcolepsy. That's something that I chose to do, and that was when I was really at my lowest point. When during my separation, and I decided that I wanted to make this condition that had been kicking my butt for so long. I wanted to make it work for me, and I wanted to use it to better myself and to better the world. And I figured the way to do that was to reach out. And so I just started being online, making a presence through social media. I reached out to Julie through Twitter at the time, and started pestering her with posts, and she responded, and I started with in chat with my Kyle on Twitter as well, and that was the beginning of a huge change in my life, of learning to take control of my condition, and taking ownership of it, and learning that I can use it to make a better me. It doesn't have to be a negative. It can be a positive. It's been a positive in my life. It's definitely the biggest struggle that I have to deal with, but it's also the source of my strength as well. So you want to go to the next slide? I'm not done yet. I've got a lot left to accomplish. I want to continue to be a patient advocate. During the whole process of me getting diagnosed and some life events happening, when you find out that you're going to become a dad, not once, but twice in 2 years, it kind of disrupts, your college career a little bit. So I still have 2 classes left at Belmont, and that's a big goal for me, is to go ahead and complete that. I just needed to be in the right place. I think I'm there. I also want to compete in a powerlifting competition. I won't be competing for against anybody else except for myself, and I've been competing against myself for a long time. As you see there, I've got my strong and pretty shirt going, and that is my philosophy in the gym. Is to be strong and pretty, to be a little flamboyant, a little over the top, but it's what I enjoy doing. And I've made some of my best friends there at the local gym I go to, Poach Gym, and I use my weightlifting as a way to connect with other people, and to be an advocate, kind of on a grassroots one-on-one approach. You can make a difference in the world just by connecting with one person at a time. These are great opportunities to connect with large groups of people. Being a Rising Voices of Narcolepsy speaker gives me a chance to connect with dozens, if not hundreds of people. But that one-on-one connection that you make, that you can make every day, at least when there's not a pandemic going on, but when you have a chance to see people on a daily basis, and you can discuss your symptoms, how life has impacted you, those are the experiences that people carry with them forever. They'll go, okay, I know somebody, I know Matt from the gym. He has narcolepsy. He's the world's strongest person with narcolepsy and cataplexy. I don't know what that means, but he's sleepy a lot, but he still does awesome things. And this right here is hanging up in the gym on the wall of fame at Poe's Gym. And so, that's just the kind of support that I receive from my guys. And I also am a Project Sleep volunteer. I want to continue to do that to raise money and resources, and continue to be an advocate in the legislative world as well. So that's what I've got in store for my future. And the big reason that we're doing this with Rising Voices is that the average time between symptoms and diagnosis is 8 to 15 years, and so that's kind of right with how long it took for me. I was about 12, 13 years between my symptom onset and diagnosis, and that's just way too long. If we can reduce that time, and the goal of Project Sleep, it's ambitious, is to reduce it down to 2 years. But every year that we take on, every year we get closer to that goal, is more time that somebody has to process life and to live life to their best possible life that they can. Treatments are available, knowing that they're not alone, and that there's a supportive environment. Right now, it's the best time to be diagnosed with narcolepsy ever. I mean, not if there's ever a good time, but with medical advances, with social media, the ability to stay connected, a lot of these things that weren't available when I was diagnosed, they're available now. And so, it's our time to kind of to make strides reducing that time. And under 50% of people with this condition are currently diagnosed. That means there's a lot of people who are out there living undiagnosed, and so if sharing my story helps one person become diagnosed quicker, or to make that connection, it makes my experience all the worthwhile. And so, that's just kind of that's what we do, and that's why we do it. If you want to go to the next slide, Rising Voices of Narcolepsy is the program that you've been watching, and this is a chance for any person with narcolepsy to go out and to share their story, to develop their story. Either you don't have to be a speaker, you don't have to get up in front of other people. You can choose to write. There's a writing portion, but it's just your chance to share your story, and every story is valuable. It's the one-on-one stories that make a difference. Statistics only tell a fraction of the story. It's that personal connection that you make with doctors, and you make with other people in the community that are going to help us reach our goals. And so with that, I will kind of turn it back over to Julie. That's the Matt Horsnell portion of the program.
Yay, Matt.
Thank you, Julie.
Great job. I know everyone's clapping in their shelters across
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Great job tonight. I hope you feel so super proud of that.
I do. I feel really good about that. And it felt great. Each time I do this, it grows a little bit. There's more confidence.
You get funnier and funnier.
I think so. And according to my mom, I also get a little bit more handsome every time I tell this story. So there's that too.
Shout out to Matt's mom.
Yeah. Yeah, she's always said I was special.
Definitely special. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Please type in some questions for Matt on the Facebook comments, and we will try to get a few of those over to Matt to answer for you tonight. I'm going to start with a few questions.
Okay.
So first, to kick things off, as everyone else is typing in their questions, thank you for sharing about what your kids mean to you. You had me you had me in tears. That was just really touching. And I was wondering if you I always think it's interesting when kids, how did the interactions go with your kids? Did they always know that you had narcolepsy? When do you introduce it? When do you talk about it? Or how has that experience been with them?
well, I've never really shied away from explaining to them that, daddy is a little bit different when it comes to sleep. My diagnosis was when they were so little, so they've known and I've known about it the whole time. It kind of just gradually went from, daddy needs extra sleep, trying to explain that to the girls, to daddy has a sleep disorder. They know the terminology, they know what I go through better than anybody on the planet. They see my day-to-day struggles, and they're tremendous. You know, they're in an age now where they're super helpful and supportive around the house. Rachel is my alarm clock. So when we have this thing called school, she comes in and Dad, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. And she's great about you know helping me get up. Caden he's 7. His awareness is growing. He looked at me the other day and he says, "Well, Daddy, you sleep a lot." Yeah, yes, I do, Caden. And he goes, "Well, it's not like a bad thing." And he'd say, "You do a great job of like playing with me, but sometimes, I have to wake you up." And that's something that I had to talk to him the other day. It's, Daddy needs some extra naps, but also if you need daddy time, you're the most important thing in my world. So, we can get through this together. And so, making sure that I go outside with them and spend time with them, that's really key. But they're tremendous little helpers, and my girls help watch Caden, so I can take a nap, and they're super helpful.
That is awesome to hear. Let's see. Okay, we do have a question from Sheila.
Mhm.
Do you ever get breakthrough cataplexy with exercise?
Mhm.
In other words, she says, I think I have a limit of exercise time and then I crash.
Yes, that's a great question. I do have to be conscious about that. I still squat in a squat rack, and I do choose exercises that I know I can bail on if I needed to. I've become more cognizant and more aware of what limits those are, and when I'm pushing too close to those limits, and I can kind of pull back. I'll also, I try to schedule my workouts during the time when I have the most spoons left, if you follow spoon theory. But so that I can get my workouts in. Immediately following my workouts, I usually do take a 15-minute nap, to kind of to refresh. But there's been many times in the gym when I've just had to say, you know what, today is not the day that I'm going to be picking up the heaviest things. I'm going to kind of reel it in a little bit. So yes, Sheila, I do have still experience that on occasion. My cataplexy tends to be the most impactful later on, as my stimulant medication is wearing off at nighttime. That's when it picks up, because my emotions are a little bit more on the surface. And so that's when I experience the most interruption with cataplexy. The slurred speech is the big one that I deal with. The dropsies with the hand and the knee buckling are things that I experience the most.
Yeah, that's similar to my experience too. I'd say my cataplexy is worse at night. So I
Mm.
usually work out late at night, late. But yeah, great description, Matt. We have another. Oh, and I also just want to say hi to Sheila. Sheila, I know you're up in Nova Scotia, and I was thinking of you today when I saw the tragedy that happened there today. So thinking of you, big hearts to everyone.
Yes, and
Uh,
thank you, Sheila. You're awesome. You're one of my favorite advocates out there. So,
we have a question from Eilish. I love the sculptures. Do you ever sculpt things from your dreams, like characters, etc.?
I use them for inspiration. There are some of my stuff is pretty dark, and I do find that my creativity flows so much better to work on these sculptures at nighttime. And so there's been times when I wake up when I can't sleep, I'll get up and I'll actually start assembling some of the sculptures together, and it just seems like the creative process is a little bit more seamless during that time, I don't overthink and overanalyze things. I'm just like, yeah, it looks like an eye. That goes there. That goes there. It's a long process to work on a piece because the adhesive takes a while to set, and so I can only work on bits and pieces of one piece at a time, allow it to set, and then usually I've got like 2 or 3 pieces that I'm kind of working on a little bit, and Caden will help too. He'll point out, he'll be like, yeah, Dad, you should put like this as an eyebrow, or he'll make suggestions too. So it's and I'll do a whole post on Instagram where I put up a whole bunch of my sculptures, and most of them have found adopted homes. Julie has one of my sculptures. She has an owl. I think my mom has like at least half a dozen sculptures. And my brother has a couple of them. He has a giant middle finger I made for him because that's just my brother. He loves the middle finger. Love you, Alan. And you're one of my heroes, little brother.
Thank you for that question, Eilish. Eilish is a wonderful artist as well.
Yes.
And Rising Voices advocate that we will get on here soon enough. So I had, let's see, I don't see other questions right now from the broadcast. I had a question, if I could read my writing. You gave, I think it was your first Rising Voices presentation to pharmacy students.
Yes.
Tell us about
I did. Yeah, that was back in October of last year. And so it was actually right before the Narcolepsy Network conference. It was a busy week for me because I also spoke to a pharmaceutical company like 2 days afterwards. And so it was that was a busy time, but that was a great speech. I spoke to Belmont's College of Pharmacy. I spoke to about 35 of their first and second year students. And one of the reasons that I chose to speak to pharmacy students is because that's who, me as a I guess you call it a patient, a person with narcolepsy, that's who I have most interaction with in the medical community. I see them multiple times per month versus, just once every 6 weeks or so. And so for me to make sure that they know what it's like living with narcolepsy, that was really important. I had worked in a pharmacy when I was early in college, and that was actually when I met my first person with narcolepsy. Kind of ironic, I didn't actually know at the time that I would end up, being on the other side of the counter. But I remember him coming in and having a prescription for a stimulant dose that just seemed like high. And I remember asking the pharmacist, gosh, is this okay? And it's like, well, no, this is what a lot of people with narcolepsy need to function. And I just thought, well, yeah, that okay. But going to see pharmacists, it's important that you have a connection with them because they need to know what's going on in your life. The medication that you're taking is medically necessary for you to function. And so for me, reaching young people who are still learning and about this, that was really important.
That's awesome. So we don't have any more questions from the Facebook viewers. I just wanted to say that I am not sure about this. You're the strongest person. I mean, I got some muscles.
You do have some guns. I did want to show everybody that I am wearing my Superman shirt underneath here. So I kept that hidden the whole presentation.
Well, I forgot to wear my Wonder Woman shirt today, but
okay.
We are going to have a thumb wrestle someday to decide who's actually stronger.
Yes.
And but I will say about
Game
Matt,
on.
not to like flatter him, but I will because it's true. I think Matt has the most persistence of anyone I've come across. He is so persistent in his way that he shows up for this community, for other people. And I think that is a form of strength that shines through so brightly. So I'm so
thank you so much
for your efforts as a patient advocate and as a speaker and just everything you do for this community and people individually. So if you guys don't follow Matt, he's on Twitter, he's on Instagram. So make sure you follow him. And one last thing we have to address, because you brought it up, is the
Okay.
sign, Matt, for his 2019 goals. I guess it was your, I don't know if it was,
Yes.
can you explain the beginning of that?
Okay. So yeah, it was a Twitter thing I posted in 2019. It was I had goals. I wanted to you know get find an apartment. I was in a transition. I wanted to go to a conference, and I wanted to. At the time, I had just, her audiobook had meant so much to me. You know, I was driving home long distances, and it was a particularly tough time during my divorce, and just to know that I wasn't alone. I was going home to an empty house. This was before I was primary custodial parent. I just, her words, just listening to her story, just helped me make it through those drives. And so I made a joke about, she had been signing put up something about signing autographs. I was like, well, I want a signed copy of her audiobook. And I didn't think it would actually be possible, because you can't sign an MP3.
Right.
It's not. And so
Right.
that was the running joke for a while. And then on my
Now my
birthday.
turn. Yeah, my turn.
Go ahead.
And so he said this, he wanted, one of his 2019 goals was to get a signed copy of my audiobook. And I'm like, I don't know how that's not possible, but he's so funny. And like, I had to think about it. And eventually I realized I had the printed manuscript of what I had used to record the audiobook. So this like copy of it has all my times I was going to take a breath, and like lots of words underlined, or like explanations, and like all my notes, because it was actually really challenging to record an audiobook. And I don't think it's very good, but anyway, and I had this big copy of it, and I was going to hold on to it, but then I realized I could sign that and I could send it to him for his birthday. So that's what I did.
Yes, and it takes a I don't want to turn around because my kitchen's a mess, but it's in a display cabinet right over here. It's one of my prized possessions. I have like 4 autographs on display in my house. 2 are Carolina basketball coaches, another one's Bill Kazmaier, and the 4th is Julie's. So just to show you the respect that I have for what she's done for all people with narcolepsy. She's prominently featured in my house, and that's like I said, that's one of my prized possessions. You won't pry that from my hands. I'll probably be buried with it. So, but like I said, I appreciate everybody, and there's so many people.
One more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we have from Kimberly. Kimberly says, can you talk a little bit about how you deal with health insurance and support of your kids?
Okay, that's a great question. For me, I am, I only work part-time. Well, that was before everything happened, but I'm blessed to live in a state that does have a fairly good Medicaid program. It's called TennCare, and they provide coverage for minors who don't have it, and also for people who are considered uninsurable and who fall below certain income category. And so, I meet those qualifications. It's limited in terms of the number of prescriptions I can get per month, and I do have to at times jump through a little more hoops, but I'm very blessed to have that. And that's just the importance of making sure that this is going to be me stepping on my political box here for a minute. The importance of having Medicaid, Medicare, and government assistance for insurance. And like I said, it's because I live in Tennessee that I think that we have such a decent program. Not every state has such an advanced Medicaid program, but that's the answer to that question. It would be a struggle otherwise.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's just really important for people to know about, because it helps to put a face to the people that are on programs like that. And
Yeah.
I just thank you for sharing
Well,
that. Thank you, Kimberly, for asking
yeah,
that.
and it's something that for a while I was a little bit, hesitant to disclose, but it's important that people know that these programs they help out real people, and my kids are beneficiaries. I'm a beneficiary of this, and these social programs are critically important, especially during times like these. So
Well, thank you, Matt, so much. And thank you for everyone who tuned in tonight. We are going to, I don't think we have any more questions, so I think we are going to go ahead and say goodnight. But Matt, did you have anything you wanted to say?
no, just thank you so much to everybody who's a part of my support network, all the people from Project Sleep and from Wake Up Narcolepsy and in my narcolepsy network friends. You guys just keep me going, and don't be afraid to follow me on Instagram. I expect to have at least 4 new followers on Instagram. After this, we'll see. But no, everybody's great, and thank you so much for just this platform, for what you do, Julie. And if you, Rising Voices, I can't speak highly enough of it. It's the way to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And thanks everyone
Right.
for tuning in. And we'll be back again next Sunday. If this is your first video, please share it on Facebook. That really helps us get the word out to other people. And please tune in. We have a whole library now, whole collection of videos for you to watch from the past couple months. So please check those out and tune in next Sunday for another speaker. And
All right.
we say goodnight now. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matt.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.